So it's hard to have confidence sometimes when we visit the hospital. And so we've talked through 7 things to always do when you visit the hospital, 4 things to sometimes do. Now let's discuss 7 things I encourage you to never do when you visit the hospital. Number 1, I encourage you never to force prayer. And hear me clearly, I always want you to pray, but to force out loud prayer with a person who's in a difficult situation sometimes is more detrimental to where they're at spiritually than it is actually helpful. If you think about forcing someone to have a conversation with someone that they're just not ready to have, it can actually do more harm to that relationship than it can do good sometimes. And so while I always encourage you to pray, if they're not ready to pray out loud audibly with you, don't force it. Number 2, never be afraid to cry. When you go into a difficult situation and you feel overwhelmed by what this person that you care about is experiencing or has just been told, it's okay for you to shed some tears too. Now, obviously, this is their situation. You don't want to make it all about yourself. And if you become too overwhelmed, it might be good to step outside. But when we follow the model of those who really practice the best compassionate care, we're willing to shed some tears ourselves. So never be afraid to cry. Number 3, never interrogate the person about the medical situation that's going on. There are a few reasons for this. One is they may not be totally aware of what's going on, depending on how sick they are or what medications they're having to take. The real point of your visit isn't to figure out exactly what's happening medically. The real point of your visit always is to provide that compassionate care, to connect on a spiritual level with them, not to become their physician. So never interrogate the person about what's landed them in this situation. Number 4, never question their faith. I remember hearing a famous preacher who was near the end of his life, struggling with ALS, and his speech was garbled as he talked into the recording. And he said, "People keep telling me to trust God. And I want to ask them, what do you think I'm trying to do?" In my experience, people who are going through a medical crisis, who are people of faith, usually are having an experience of deeper faith than I am when I'm not in that situation. So never question their faith. Always support them wherever they are. Number 5, never disparage the clinicians, the doctors and nurses and the rest of the healthcare team when you're talking with the patient. That doesn't mean you can't ask an important question or stand up or advocate for them like we mentioned in the last video. But when you're in the room with the patient talking about, well, these doctors don't really know what they're doing, or they don't really believe in God the way we do, that sets up a dangerous dissonance between the patient and the people who are caring for her. It's more important for that person to feel like everyone is on their team. So never disparage the clinicians. Number 6, never pretend that you understand. When we're going through something that's difficult, it's unique to us. And so even if somebody's been through something that's extremely similar, it's not the same experience. We're all as unique as our own fingerprint. And so when you go into a room, if you've had a similar experience, don't shift the conversation to what you've experienced to try to explain that you understand. It's okay to use your story to make connections and to affirm what they're going through, but never, ever pretend you understand what they're thinking, feeling, or experiencing. Number 7, never pretend that you know what God will do. I can tell you that as a chaplain working in a hospital setting, there's been times that I'm sure that a person is at the end of their lives, and I've been wrong. There's been other times that I thought a person had quite some time to go still, and the clinical team did as well. And we were wrong. The truth of the matter is we don't know what God's going to do. We don't know what the outcome is going to be for that person, and it's actually spiritually irresponsible for us in the presence of that patient and that family to pretend as though we know what God will do. So these are 7 things never to do when you visit the hospital.